How's it
How
going?
are you? I'm Zach. Nice to meet you.
I'm Tim. Nice to meet you, man. Um, I really submersed myself in your guys' music lately, and
I apologize. No, I'm
I'm very excited, man, and I appreciate the time.
yeah, absolutely. It's weird to put like full face on at 11 a.m.
Yeah, it is it's definitely I love for one thing, um, just watching your guys' videos. I'm a horror movie fan, dude. I
Oh yeah.
love that's all I'm into, and basically. But it to watch, to see you guys and your characters, it's fucking amazing. You guys can make your own like horror movie.
That would be really fun to actually do like a short flick, like a short horror movie. Maybe one day when we can actually like be around a bunch of people again.
Yeah, oh, yeah, tell me about it. So, um, talking me through dead animal assembly plant. How did you guys get started?
So actually, Dead Animal Assembly Plan started as a solo side project for me. At the time, I was working on, or I was in a friend's band called Bound in Oblivion, and I had all these ideas. And yeah, I'm a horror nerd, a drama geek. So when I was in high school, I was in drama club and did like local
Dude,
theater. Yeah, that's right. Drama geeks are the best, as I'm saying. Um,
and that was like for me in drama. Like I wasn't athletic enough to get girls for for sports and and I wasn't rich, so I couldn't wear like awesome clothes. So that was a place where I got chicks.
I'm good. I'm glad that worked out for you. Not in my school. No, it was all the jocks and rednecks that got the girls, not the freaks and weirdos.
I know, I feel you.
uh, so the whole like impetus of Dead Animal Assembly Plant was I had all these ideas that didn't quite fit into my friend's band that I was in, and so being such a horror nerd and drama geek, I knew from the onset that I wanted to do something that was theatrical. Like I wanted it to be equal parts music and theater because, I mean, growing up, the biggest influences I had musically were all the bands that went like that extra visual mile to give people like an entire presentation as opposed to like it just being one thing or just this other thing. And then over the years, I just started it by myself, just kind of tinkering around in the studio. And after a few years, I wanted to do a live show, but I didn't want it to be just like industrial karaoke where it's me like hitting space bar. I'm just like, all right, now I'm gonna start singing to just a bunch of backing tracks. Um, so I was able to cobble together kind of like a makeshift band with some friends and some friends of friends, and now like we're almost 10 years later from our first show, so somehow it's still going.
Yeah, and it's killer. I mean, even to the extent there's like backstory to it. There is you really gave a shit, you
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
to the project.
I feel like people deserve. I mean, it's fun to create a story, and it also helps like having, especially kind of a themed band, as it were. It helps give you a sense of direction, so you don't feel directionless and disjointed, but gives you that freedom to express yourself. And so, like from the onset, it's like, okay, I'm gonna create a mythology behind what Dead Animal Assembly Plan is, the history of the Sweetmeat Slaughterhouse, and as band members have come and gone, people have written their own backstories, and we wanted to, like, for me, I didn't want to like give everyone their own backstory. I wanted people to really kind of sink into their character and kind of develop it. So, I had my characters, the butcher, and then as people kind of came in and they kind of understood the vibe and what I was going for, then they just kind of developed their own characters.
That seems that seems like a hard task, right? Because a lot of people, it's hard enough for them to even show up to a fucking practice, let
Yeah,
alone to be creative and create your backstory and give a shit.
I mean, to be fair, it hasn't always been easy with some past band members. It, that some people in the past didn't quite jive with the whole concept, and there was a lot of butting of heads. I mean, I always said, "Who needs kids when you have a band?" Because
Oh my god, I so know that. I know what you're talking about.
um, but through all the like through all that frustration and like all those trials and tribulations, when you do find the people that get it, that it clicks, it just makes everything so much more dynamic and not so stagnant. So there's all this room for growth and movement. And I feel like if you find people that are excited, just as excited as you are about something, then that really can make things flourish. But it took a lot of growing pains, that's for sure.
Is there any, has there ever been a character that you just fell in love with? Like it might be in the band now or might have left.
Um, well, honestly, like the current iteration of the band for me is my I feel is the most creative, the most conducive to the whole process, the whole theme. Like yeah, just we've gone through unfortunately we've gone through a decent amount of band members over the years. Um, but the I felt like each time someone left, it felt like a blow. It was just like, okay, well, now I got to kind of pick up the pieces and fill the gaps. But uh, the current version of the band I feel is the most creative, most cohesive, and I think that like will translate better through the new album that's coming out and for all the future music because it feels less disjointed. It feels more like everyone kind of working at the same pace. So, as far as favorites, like the current version of the band is my favorite as a whole because I have more fun now working on music, playing live shows with the current version of the band that I have in the past.
Nice. One of the members, one of the cast members that you have in the band, Rags. I think that's a scary character because
He's
that's
scary.
realistic to me. Um, I love horror movies, and I wrote it down a quote while I was doing some, looking into your stuff, and it says, "What frightens me is humans that are not programmed by society. You see the worst of humanity programmed via social media, and to me, that's not scary. What's scary is the people who haven't been programmed by our society."
Yeah, I mean that's actually a pretty good summation of him. He's actually he's not in the band anymore.
Oh,
He moved he moved out of the area. He moved to the East Coast, but we're still in contact. He did have a small like role in the new album, but to that point, like you're spot on. The thing is, like he played up his character, especially on stage, but there wasn't a lot of acting. He's not an actor, so
so he's just crazy.
yeah, I mean he's it's that but like I said, it's the people who genuinely play by their own rules, not by the rules that they try to portray online or like you said, like some kind of um phony social construct. People who are generally like, no, what you see is what you get. And I'm not putting on airs for anyone. I'm not wearing a mask for anyone, maybe literally, but not figuratively. And I'm just this fucking strange.
Yeah. Um, it is. one of the things I was thinking about is, have you ever thought of writing an album as a movie?
That it's yeah, I mean, to me, um, I mean, in a sense, like all of music writing is kind of like paint or writing a script to a movie. In a sense, like each song, um, and the new album isn't, while it's not like a necessarily like you know a wall, like Pink Floyd The Wall kind of narrative. There is kind of a loose narrative, kind of the beginning of it, kind of opening the gates to the afterlife, and then each song in a sense is almost like getting deeper, deeper, deeper into the abyss. uh, but I have thought about writing actual I toyed around the idea of doing like a concept album slash stage show that related specifically to Dante's Inferno.
Dude,
I
come
thought that
on,
would be really
please.
fun.
Can you please,
Because
please?
I have a song on the new album that is like that does go through all the different levels of hell, um, in the song, but it's kind of hard and fast. Where it would be really fun to actually do a entire like drawn out soundtrack cinematic. Because I love. Recently started. We actually did a lot of soundtrack cinematic soundscape work for our friends Mothmeister. These Belgian surrealist photographers. They have an art book coming out later this month, and
I did see that.
yeah. So in addition to the our album, we actually have wrote 9 tracks for them that are all instrumental. And but that just like that did make me kind of get that bug of wanting to, yeah, what he said. um so yeah, I guess in a long roundabout way to answer your question, yes, I would love to do that. And I think getting this album out and being able to have a little more free time and not having that stress of having to release anything at this point, not being able to plan a tour, give us those that freedom.
What I've noticed, and this is awesome that you can do this. It doesn't happen in every every artist I run across. I You leave me yearning for more.
Well, thank
That
you.
is, to me, that is a hard task. Very few people have left me yearning for more.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you. I mean that means a lot. And I mean, to me, my one of my little philosophies is it's better to leave people wanting more than to wear out your welcome.
yeah, and I mean, think about. I mean, just for me to think about the people who have left me yearning for more. Metallica, they left me yearning for more. With the Black Album. Um, who else? Some 41, All Killer No Filler. It left me yearning for more. This is the equivalent to that. Like, there's so, like, I want to know about the Butcher. I want to know about Rags. I want to know about these people. For some reason, I'm drawn into it. Maybe it's me being a horror nerd, um, or maybe it's on purpose. Can you go into that and speak about, because it's so beautiful. What you have is beautiful.
Uh, well, I think, I mean, and for me again, maybe this goes back to being drama nerds, is that it's creating not just an image, but creating like an immersive world. And I think it's easier. I mean, for me, the icons growing up with, like, they were larger than life. There was something kind of removed from humanity about people,
Mm.
um, that did that little extra, that maybe went a little bit further with creating um, uh, a concept over a person. And to me, and that's why I really wanted the band to, but I didn't want any side to falter. Like, I didn't want it to be so image driven that the music suffered, or to be so music driven that the image suffered, is finding that equilibrium. And I think, you know, being creating that balance between creating a strong image that people can follow and can recognize easily. I mean, that's a big thing. Is like, you there's a zillion bands out there. And I mean, and there's a lot of bands that do makeup and do masks. I mean, you do get lumped into that novelty band, uh, you know, corner that, it can be pretty divisive. People have pretty sharp opinions about that. But if you can prove and show that, this is not just an image, or it's not just that, it's not just a gimmick, that is just like, hey, no, we're just trying to create like a living comic book, living horror comic book, and just have fun with it. It's like, we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously, and we want to bring everyone in for that ride. And a big part of it for me is like, you know, is the not to be exclusive, to be inclusive. Like, when you're in the slaughterhouse, your family, you're a resident of the slaughterhouse. And I think that's more important to create this community, um, to, yeah, pretty much to bring everyone along for the ride, create a strong image, but also make sure that you have a strong enough message that people can relate to. Because, we all music, it gets us through everything in life. And if we don't have a voice, music can become that voice that really digs into us. So it's really just a matter of finding all those little pieces and putting it together in some kind of ridiculously chaotic tapestry.
The name Dead Animal Assembly Plant. Um, how and why?
Oh, that's like the $10,000 question. It's like, why? Where did that name come from? So the um, the origin of that is actually, it's funny, but it's actually really, it's really banal in a lot of ways. So I was looking at business licenses, and I came across one that in the state of Oregon, because I live out in the Pacific Northwest. So in the state of Oregon, in order to transport and store animal carcasses, you have to get a business license called a dead animal assembly plant. And when I saw that and I read that, I was like, that is the most absurd thing. Like, I mean, the name jumble itself was confusing, and the fact that you have have to have a business license for something so specific. I'm just like, well, I'm gonna make a band called that, because that's just absurd. That's it.
And it's an awesome name. Um, for you, what is your favorite scary movie? What is something you watched and like it stands the test of time? It's something you love. Um, and what scares you?
That is a really good question. Um, I will say that the movie that probably traumatized me the most, um, was the original Amityville Horror. Uh, when I was a kid, when I first saw it, there is a scene in the movie where, um, the mom's walking by the daughter's room, and she hears the daughter talking, and she opens the door, and the little girl's sitting talking to nobody, and there's like across from her is like an empty rocking chair. And she's like, "Oh, who are you talking to?" Like, "Oh, I was talking to my friend, but you scared me." Went out the window, and she looks out the window, and it's pitch black out. And then staring back at her, all of a sudden, are like two glowing eyes that just like look and then turn away. That scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. That like made it so I could not, and to this day, there's still the voice in the back of my head, um is I when I look out of a dark window or into an area where it's just black and you can't see, I'm just terrified that I'm going to see two glowing eyes staring right back at me. And while it may not be my favorite horror movie, it's definitely the horror movie that somehow got into my psyche and damaged me.
I interviewed her, the
Oh,
daughter.
really?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
the real life daughter.
That's really cool. Well, thanks to her scene, I'm messed up.
It's a yeah, I know what you're talking about. And honestly, I've interviewed a lot of paranormal people. Bro, I just think she's telling the truth. I think it's a true story.
Yeah.
I've heard some stories where people are. I've interviewed some people. I'm like, this is sort of bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it can be described as other ways. With her, just the way she framed it, I believe her.
I mean, it's hard to. I mean, I am. I'm gonna say I am a hopeful skeptic. I guess it's like I'm very skeptical of a lot of things. But I'm hopeful in the sense that it's like I want to believe it, and I've had some interesting experiences, things I can't explain. And it's like, how do you argue someone's experience? Like, how do you tell them, oh, what you experienced is wrong? So it's like, well, okay, sure, you weren't there. I experienced it, you didn't. So, I mean, I understand, but at the same time, like, how you can't take that away from someone. And when people are super adamant about it, and especially if they never change their story, it definitely at least gives them that some kind of credence to what they're saying.
I saw this movie the other day. It's called The Platform.
Oh, I've not watched that one yet.
It is super. It's not really like ghost or paranormal scary, but it's like humans are fucking crazy, and and that is sad. Like it's scary.
Yeah, I mean, and this has been something that's for me, like especially if when you look at a lot of like horror punk and stuff like that, that write about like ghosts and skeletons and UFOs and stuff like that. It's like I love the campy kind of cartoony horror stuff, but the scariest part of life are humans and the reality of what we are capable of doing to each
Mm.
other. Like nothing is more horrible than reality. That's the real horror story, and that's the kind of horror that we try to um, you know try to write about and try to come across as.
Um, you have an album coming out, Bring Out the Dead, which I believe is out March 26th or 27th.
26, yeah.
26th. Um, Talk me behind the infancy of the decision to write the album, and what does the album mean to you, and any cool little tidbits that you can fill us in about this album.
So the album itself, I mean, it it definitely was kind of hodgepodge together over the years. Like a song would be written and rewritten, and it started so like the just like the infancy of it started a number of years ago, um, and it it's unfortunate in the sense that it's not as stitched together seamlessly as I would have liked, um, because it did kind of traverse a timeline of going through different band members. But to me, the album itself, which is kind of funny because yeah, the name "Bring Out the Dead" is unfortunately pretty relevant to what's going on in the world. But then again, when is it not the case? Um, so the writing was, and maybe this kind of comes across in the album, is that it was kind of chaotic. There was a lot of tumultuous goings on behind the scenes in the band, and you really, and some of the songs, yeah, geez, some of the songs were just almost scrapped, written and rewritten so many times, um, that I I really question whether the album itself was ever going to really come to be, like come to pass at all. Uh, but like the first track on the album is Cemetery Slums, and that one, it's an intro track, but conceptually, that while it was one of the latter tracks to be written, it kind of helped set the pace for the entire album. Because reading about what a cemetery slum is and how there's people, like whole societies living in a cemetery among the dead, uh, and they get it's they get paid a paltry amount of money, and even if that to help take care of the graves. I was like, well, that is a perfect representation of us as a society, as we are just living among the dead, scraping by, and just always teetering that line between what's right here and what's inevitable. And so the album itself kind of went down that road, and even the older songs that may have been written long before just that initial conceptual track was put in place, it just kind of naturally fit. Um, and let's see, I'm trying to think of some stories behind the writing of the album.
Were you guys overthinking things?
Um, Sometimes I have that problem.
Me
I
too.
will admit, I have that problem of overthinking things, uh, not in any kind of intentional way, in the sense as is like, well, I want to going about this, and because a lot of lyric writing is a lot of, for me, there's a sense of uh, stream of consciousness. Uh, like maybe I overthink the totality of it, but on a granular level, it is very stream of consciousness, and which is to my detriment sometimes because it can make me really kind of ADD and like all over the place. And some people just have to wrangle me in. As anyone who's been around me long enough knows that I just have to get wrangled in every once in a while. Um, but the album itself, it did help me focus on creating something that was more cohesive, because and something that was more collaborative. Um, the all the songs were had bits and pieces from all the different personalities in the band, where in the past maybe it was just like me and one other person that wrote a song entirely, or it felt more like um a smaller circle was doing a lot of the work, where this one, it felt more open. It felt like everyone had their voice and everyone had their say in how things were constructed and how things were written, and people were able to put their personalities in things, which for me was a good practice of letting go some of that control. So yeah, it's funny because you think it's like, oh yeah, the album, but the whole thing feels like a blur. It's like a weird time warp. And even though like the first song that we ever worked on, which is ironically the last song, is part of the first 10 tracks. Um, because we added a few bonus tracks because the album was delayed because of the pandemic. The label was just like, "Hey, do you have any bonus tracks that you want to maybe put on the album?" So we were able to put together two bonus tracks. So the first 10 tracks are like the album, um, and so the last song on the album, which is "The End of You," was actually the one that was written first, and so it's almost like, I don't know, it's like a Christopher Nolan movie. Then we just worked backwards.
All right. Um, I what you're what you've encountered, it's very reminiscent with me. Um, and so I feel you, man. I had a podcast a couple, for 10 years. It was called the Red Light District Show, and that's what I would do. I would overthink everything and hold everything close to me, and that would lead to all this stress and people being pissed off. You know what I mean? And by letting that go, it's not only freeing for me, but it's also, you know, building up my team.
Yeah,
So I feel you, buddy.
it's tough. It's like
Uh,
when something's like your baby,
yes.
it's like there's a certain unreasonable expectation that you have within yourself to, and it can be very self-destructive and self-defeating
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, to the point where it's just like, I'm hurting this thing that I care so much about more than I'm helping it by being so. stuck in my own head and thinking maybe people are against me or things are against me that really aren't.
Hmm.
And you maybe unintentionally, subconsciously keep people out. You keep people like an arm's distance away, even if they're your closest bandmates, because you're just there's a sense of fear. And it's not even necessarily control, like, oh, I'm a control freak and everything has to be my way. It's more like being afraid to let go in some respects.
Yeah, and because I think a part of me was like, "Yo, if I'm gonna fail, it's gonna be on me,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
I would always have that mentality. But with that, that means if we're gonna succeed, it's on me too. And there's more characters. You know, I wrote my podcast is very theatrical, right? It's a bunch of pretend, um, and so it by me doing that would fuck up other people.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was, and I once I got out of it, it was hard. You know, it was hard to get out of it. It was hard to get out of that space, and it was hard. It was a big lesson to learn in my life.
I mean, it's. I think all of art, in every way, shape, and form, it's a really delicate house of cards,
Hmm.
and it just takes. I mean, you see it time and time again. It takes the smallest nudge for the whole thing to collapse. Just
Yeah.
gone. Here 1 minute, gone the next. I guess it's all of life, but like art is so constructive and destructive, all those competing opposite forces constantly. And usually it's inside your head, and usually it's the one person that's just like constantly conflicted. Just like
Yeah. My man, is there anything else you would like to um, mention for this article?
oh geez. Well, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, and I'm sure a lot of people are tired of hearing this, but you know, we are missing everyone a ton. We can't wait to come out, get out there again, start doing shows, start playing. But we want everyone to be safe. Everyone needs to be safe. People need to listen to the experts and not the politicians because they want two different things. So
Tell
be
them.
safe, wear a mask, just use your head. And I understand that we're all restless. We all have like an insane sense of cabin fever. But I mean, just think the Spanish flu lasted 2 years and killed 50 million people. And we're just barely a year in. So just let's be a little kind, a little patient, a little less selfish, so we can all go out and have fun again, all get crazy. And, we have a ton of new music. We can't wait to start playing it again for everyone. Um, 2019 was an awesome year for us. We just did our first national tour, and then 2020 hit, and it's like, so but we want everyone to be safe and be healthy. Like that's more important than us going out and playing. But my God, we're ready for it. We're so just
Are you okay in Portland?
yeah. I mean, uh my my wife, who is the one of the guitarists in the band, she and we both work in the medical field. Fortunately, I get to work from home in like more the computer tech side. But she actually deals with COVID patients, so she's vaccinated. So we're careful. It is scary. Uh, and I've had people close to me get sick with it. I've had known a few people that have died from it. So it's I mean, in Portland is an interesting place. Been here for a long time, and especially last year when we had the pandemic in full swing and all the BLM protests. Um,
Is it protests still happening right now?
yeah, yeah, they still happen. They're not as well televised, and they're not as since the feds pulled out. They were the ones really exacerbating things. I mean, hey, that was the first time I ever got tear gas. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It was horrible, but uh, yeah, there's still a lot of protests around the federal courthouse and the ICE building.
Yeah,
So
that's what I think I read something about that Monday that the ice building on Sunday night got attacked.
yeah, there's still it's pretty regular. I have friends that live within eye line of the ice building, so they're telling me they're just like, yeah. I mean, it's not as big as it was last year during those protests, but
Is this is what's going on there? Is that more BLM or is that more I don't know, Antifa, or is it more just people that just had enough of the government?
it's a mix of all of it. I'll say that. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily know the makeup of it now. It is a lot of BLM, actual like organized peaceful protests, uh, and even the Antifa folks are more reactive in the sense that they're reacting to you know basically being attacked.
Mm.
Uh, but of course, there's always the rabble rousers, the crimes of opportunity. But for the most part, the protests are. It's Portland's not like this weird anarchy zone that you
That's
know.
how I envision it, because
Like
the media doesn't cover it. So all of my news comes from people just on social media, people that are holding phones that are in the middle of it, or people reporting on it, or people so frustrated that they can't get upstairs to their house. And so that's what the vision in my head is. That so that's when I asked you, are you okay in Portland, like that's instinctively where my brain went. It's like, oh, are you safe?
fortunately for me, I live in a suburb is in Vancouver, Washington. So I'm over the river from Portland. Um, but they call Vancouver Vantucky. And that's because this is Trump country up here.
Mm,
So as liberal as Portland is, Vancouver, even though it's right over the river, it's a lot of you still see the Trump flags. You still see it's there's still a lot of tension. There's still a lot of that tension in the air. But it's definitely not as vitriolic anymore. Again, yeah, especially after the Feds kind of pulled back and stopped, overtly pepperballing and tear gassing and just snatching people off the street. When they stopped doing that, things did calm down a lot. But yeah, I mean, people are relentless. I mean, to I would say to people's credit, it wasn't just like protests against Trump. It's protests against a systemic racist system. I mean, and that system's still in place. That hasn't gone away. So that fire that kind of sparked last year, they've kept it going. But Portland is, I mean, the biggest thing to affect Portland was the pandemic, not the protests, because that shut down a lot of businesses, and all the
mm.
businesses being shut down means there wasn't that active downtown economy, and that's what really affected things.
Are you close? Are you guys still close?
We're slowly opening back up.
Can you eat
We
inside?
yes, just recently, we can. They opened up bars, restaurants, limited capacity for seating inside. It's like 20, 25% or something
Yeah,
like
we don't
that.
we don't even have that. We,
Really?
so on the 25th of January, they lifted the stay at home order, which to me was fucking absurd because I at that moment I just recovered from COVID.
Oh, gee.
Um, when they shut down, we had probably like 500 cases in our town, Los Angeles. Um, we, the hospitalizations was somewhere around 60% or something. Um, ICU occupancy was maybe around maybe the same percentage, 60%. And then when they opened up, we had over 10,000 cases, and it was 94% occupancy, or occupants inside of the ICU. It just didn't make no sense to me. So
Yeah.
now they open to stay at home. You can eat outdoors, but um, you can't eat indoors. Everything else is closed. You can eat outdoors, and then you have to wait in line to get into certain places. And
It's, I mean, and it's tough because I the government has done such a piss poor job making people feel better uh, about